September 18, 1873, Thursday morning, Wall Street. A telegram arrives at the New York Stock Exchange. J. Cooke and Company has suspended payments. The most powerful banker in America, the man who financed the Civil War, was bankrupt. Within hours, panic would grip the nation. Within days, the economy would collapse into the worst depression America had ever seen. This is the story of how victory's prosperity became disaster. The Civil War ends. J. Cooke is a hero. He'd raised over $2 billion for the Union through his revolutionary bond campaigns. He was the most trusted name in American finance. His mansion in Philadelphia was legendary. His wealth was immense. Newspapers called him the financier of the Civil War. But Cooke wasn't satisfied with past glory. He wanted to finance America's future. And America's future, everyone agreed, was railroads. The Civil War had proven how crucial railroads were for moving troops and supplies. Now, in peacetime, railroads would connect the vast continent. Fortunes would be made. The most ambitious project, the Northern Pacific Railroad, a transcontinental line from Lake Superior to Puget Sound in Washington. It would cross the Northern Territories, Minnesota, Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Washington. Over 2,000 miles of track through largely unsettled territory. The cost? Estimated at $100 million. A staggering sum. J. Cooke decided to finance it. In 1870, his firm became the exclusive agent for selling Northern Pacific bonds. It seemed like a sure thing. The years after the Civil War saw explosive railroad growth. Between 1865 and 1873, over 35,000 miles of track were laid across America. That's more than the entire U.S. railroad system before the war. The first transcontinental railroad was completed in 1869. The famous Golden Spike at Promontory Summit, Utah. It proved transcontinental railroads were possible. Investors went crazy for railroad stocks and bonds. Every town wanted rail connections. Every state competed for lines. Railroad companies were issuing bonds faster than they could lay track. The problem? Many of these railroads made no economic sense. Lines were built through territories with no population. No passengers. No freight. No revenue. But Wall Street didn't care. The bond sales were too profitable. J. Cooke's Northern Pacific was the most ambitious and most problematic. The route went through harsh terrain. Brutal winters. No settlements. Who would use this railroad? Where would the revenue come from? Cooke had an answer. Immigration and land sales. Northern Pacific owned 40 million acres along the route, a massive land grant from the government. Cooke's plan: sell land to immigrants. They'd settle along the railroad, create towns, generate freight. It was brilliant in theory. In practice, it was a disaster waiting to happen. By 1873, J. Cooke was overextended. His firm had invested heavily in Northern Pacific. They'd personally bought millions in bonds that they couldn't sell to investors. The railroad was burning through money faster than expected. Construction was behind schedule. Costs were ballooning. And immigration to the Northern Territories wasn't happening as planned. The land wasn't selling. The projected revenue didn't materialize. Cooke kept pouring money into the project, sure that success was just around the corner. He used his reputation to keep selling bonds. But behind closed doors, his firm was running out of cash. By September 1873, J. Cooke and Company was technically insolvent. They owed more than they had. The partners knew, but they kept it secret, hoping something would save them. Then, on September 18th, they couldn't hide it anymore. Creditors were demanding payment. There was no money left. At 11 a.m., J. Cooke and Company closed its doors. The news hit Wall Street like a bomb. If the J. Cooke could fail, anyone could fail. The panic was immediate and brutal. Other banks had loaned money to Cooke's firm. Now they panicked about their own exposure. Within hours, more banks announced failures. Investors rushed to sell railroad stocks. Prices collapsed. By afternoon, the New York Stock Exchange made an unprecedented decision. They closed the exchange. For the first time in its history, it would stay closed for 10 days. The hope was that closing would stop the panic. It didn't work. The panic spread beyond Wall Street to every city in America. Banks across the country had invested in railroad bonds. Now those bonds were worthless. Bank runs started. Depositors demanding their money. Banks that had been solid for decades failed overnight. By the end of September, 89 railroads had defaulted on their bonds. 18,000 businesses declared bankruptcy. The stock market had lost 25% of its value. But the worst was yet to come. The Panic of 1873 triggered what became known as the Long Depression. It would last 6 years. Unemployment reached 14%, higher than any previous crisis. In New York City, over 100,000 people were out of work by winter. Factories closed. Construction stopped. Trade dried up. The effects were global. European banks that had invested in American railroads faced massive losses. The crisis spread to Germany, Austria, and Britain. This was America's first truly global financial crisis. American financial power was now so great that when Wall Street crashed, the world felt it. J. Cooke, once the most powerful financier in America, was ruined. His firm was liquidated. His assets sold off. The mansion? Gone. The art collection? Sold. He'd lost everything. The man who had saved the Union was now broke at age 52. The irony was bitter. Cooke had financed a successful war, but he couldn't finance a railroad in peacetime. He spent years trying to recover financially. Eventually, through mining investments, he did rebuild some wealth. But he never regained his position in finance. The Panic of 1873 ended his era. The Northern Pacific Railroad? It was eventually completed, but not by Cooke. Other investors took over after the panic. The railroad finally reached Puget Sound in 1883, 10 years late. It was a success, eventually, but Cooke never saw that success. He'd bet everything on being right too early. In finance, timing is everything. The depression that followed the Panic of 1873 was devastating. From 1873 to 1879, America struggled with deflation, unemployment, and stagnation. Wages fell, prices fell, but so did employment. The railroad boom that had driven the economy was over. Overbuilding had created a glut. No one was building new lines. The Long Depression exposed fundamental problems in the American economy. There was still no central bank. No way to stabilize the financial system during crisis. The gold standard limited the money supply, making deflation worse. Banks failed because there was no lender of last resort. These problems would recur in future panics. 1893, 1907. Each crisis followed the same pattern. Speculation, over-leverage, trigger event, panic, depression. The Panic of 1873 also had political consequences. The Depression contributed to the end of Reconstruction in the South. Federal attention shifted from civil rights to economic recovery. Labor unrest increased. The Great Railroad Strike of 1877 was a direct result of wage cuts during the Depression. The crisis reshaped American politics and society for decades. From the financier who saved the Union to bankruptcy. From post-war prosperity to 6-year depression. J. Cooke's fall was spectacular because his rise had been so high. The Panic of 1873 proved that even heroes can fail, and that victory in war doesn't guarantee wisdom in peace. This is Trade Origins, where every boom contains the seeds of the next bust. Next time, the Gilded Age and the Rise of the Robber Barons, how J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, and Carnegie built empires on the ruins of the Long Depression. Subscribe to see how crisis creates opportunity for some. If the story of rise and fall resonated, hit that like button and subscribe to Trade Origins. We're documenting the cycles of boom and bust that have shaped 400 years of financial history. See you in the next one.